Call the regular meeting of Mineral City Council Tuesday, October 2nd to order. The invocation will be given by Councilman Landig.
Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day. Help us to use good judgment for the business at hand and guide us in wisdom with a continuing sense of truth and fairness for the community we represent.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Julie, please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Here.
Mr. Marne? Here. Mr. Blake?
Here.
Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Mrs. Dowling?
Here.
Mr. Kirchner?
Here.
Mr. Krieger?
Here. We have the approval of minutes for the work session of September 18th, 2018.
Move to approve?
Second.
Julie?
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. We have the regular meeting, September 18th, 2018.
Move to approve?
Second.
Julie, please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. And the minutes for the special meeting held September 26th, 2018.
Move to approve?
Second.
Julie, please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Tonight we have the first public hearing is on ordinance number 18-0-82. Quick.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Mentor 2006 as amended and the official zoning map by rezoning of approximately .19 acre of land from B2 General Business District to R2 Single Family Residential District at 8619 Mentor Avenue and 7359 Maple Street and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Mitchell, please.
Thank you. At the meeting of September 6, 2018, the Municipal Planning Commission voted 7-0 to approve both the rezoning of .19 acres of land from B2 General Business to R2 Residential at 8619 Mentor Avenue, as well as the minor subdivision of land, including 7359 Maple Street and a portion of 8619 Mentor Avenue, including permanent parcel numbers 16B, 48A, 2, 4, and 5, with the conditions noted in the staff report and is further depicted on the rezoning request and lot reconfiguration sketch, which is dated August 1st, 2018. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
No questions. Any comments from the applicant?
Yes, Rick Osborne Jr., 7050 Jackson Street, Mentor, Ohio. I acquired this property back in November, and I've been trying to lease it and/or sell part of it just as a redevelopment. And my goal is to try to help clean up the zoning on it. Parcel off one parcel along Maple, which I have under contract right now to sell for a new house, and then to redevelop the existing credit union building to a residential home. I did need to add some of the land in the back, and I did that by pulling out some of the B2 zoned land and added that to this residential parcel. I know the credit union building is a non-conforming structure in the village. But if, with someone creative enough, they could renovate that to a nice house.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Sir, please come to the podium, state your name.
Okay, it's Robert Wise, W-E-I-S, 7341 Maple Street, 2 properties adjacent to the parking lot. I believe you're received of the letter that I wrote and the signatures of quite a few residents. And our contention is very good for residential. Go ahead and rezone the one portion, make the Union Hall and that portion residential zone. But you cannot make the Union Hall residential. It will not meet any of the residential codes for R2. It would be a very big eyesore there. I recommend, and I said in here, put in a condition that it has to be removed. Then you can build a house on each of the two properties. You can have a situation that looks very nice. Maple Street looks exceptionally well kept. People are proud of their properties except for a couple. We like to maintain the streets strictly as residential. Changing it the way I've recommended, I do believe is the best thing. So are the people that signed. Any questions?
Okay. Any questions? All right, having said that, I'm not sure if you're going to stay there, or is anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Do you want to respond to any of this, Mr. Osborne?
Yes, as far as the parcel in the credit union building, the issue I have about demolishing that is the value that it has today. And to demolish that, you're really taking away a lot of the value that's there that I had planned on having, you know, as far as this redevelopment. And so to do that, you'd have the expense of the demolition of the building, and then you would also have the expense of building a new house on that, which would far exceed the value of what it's worth today. And it just doesn't make economic sense.
Okay, thank you. Council is in receipt of all correspondence received pertaining to this matter. Public hearing is adjourned. Ordinance number 18-0-083. Public hearing. Julie, please read.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance of a conditional use permit to allow a restaurant at 5834 Heisley Road in the MIP Industrial Park District by Bhavish Patel and the Viviani Family Limited Partnership.
Mr. Filipiak.
Again, thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Mitchell, please.
You had received, you're in receipt of the staff report. This was considered in front of the Planning Commission at two separate meetings, and after further consideration of the findings at the September 6th meeting, the Planning Commission voted 4-3 to approve the conditional use permit for the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through, and voted 7-0 to approve the CUP for the restaurant component, both without conditions. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, if the applicant is present, would you like to make any comments?
Good evening. My name is Scott Aurelia. I'm an attorney with Weston Hurd. I represent the applicant, Bhavesh Patel, who is the proposed purchaser of the site and the proposed developer of the Dunkin' Donuts. We selected the site based on our belief that the proposed Dunkin' Donuts is consistent with the surrounding use. Specifically, the site's approximately 700 feet south, maybe southwest, on Heisley Road from the existing McDonald's restaurant with the drive-through facility. And we, based on the staff report notes from the September 16th meeting, the additional traffic flow we believed would be very similar to, during the peak hours, would be very similar on Progress Parkway with the prior existing use of the industrial office space that was located there prior to our proposed acquisition.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor? No one speaking in favor. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Mr. President, members of council, we have had an opportunity to review this in great detail. Members of the administration, thank you for the opportunity to be at this.
Please, I know who you are, but could you say it for the record?
For the record, Jerry Rice, Senior Vice President, Steris Corporation. I'm representing Steris to express opposition to the two permits allowing a restaurant with a drive-through and an MIP zoning zone and located at 5834 Heisley Road in Progress Parkway. Before I explain our concerns with this project, I want to acknowledge the Councilman Blake and others, Mr. Kircher, in taking a look at the traffic issues that we believe, and we know our business, we know our location extremely well. And with the expansion that Steris is presently going through and understanding of the MIP standards, it would appear, at least to us, quite frankly, that it doesn't meet any of those standards that were apparently set by your previous legislation. We thank both members of council to bring this forward and to take a hard look at it, but we believe firmly in what we have seen in the traffic, the type of building that would be built in this particular area, and the standards that were set, and the rationale that we made 25 years ago to build in that type of MIP zoning area based on the standards that were set forth. Also like to thank the city manager, members of administration that also took time to look further into this for us. And again, I speak, our opposition and permitting of the MIP zone has not changed since the first planning meeting. In fact, if not, we've hardened our position. From the commission meeting earlier in August, we opposed the project for 3 reasons, and these are very important. First, we have a deep and abiding commitment to health and safety, not only of the people of Mentor and the surrounding, but to our customers, to our suppliers, and most importantly, to the employees that work at Steris, which are nearly 2,000. Some members of council have attended recent events at our endoscopy manufacturing facility where they raised the OSHA flag. That OSHA flag is raised because of the number of hours without any accident or injury. We were pleased to have you all attend, those that were able to make it, but it's based on that type of performance that you are recognized, a company is recognized by OSHA for that. As I mentioned before, we have over 2,000 people working in Mentor, and that doesn't count the number of visitors on our campus, our customers, which we bring in on a daily basis. We have a customer solutions center, we believe second to none, located here in Mentor. Most of the members of our of the council have been through it and visited it, and it is state of the art. In fact, we've just updated it once again.
When we actually get to the legislation.
Besides customers, contractors, suppliers, all are part of that increased amount of traffic that makes its way around our campus. We are a pedestrian campus, and I think that's important to understand. We are a pedestrian campus based on the amount of people that visit, that walk, that provide in their health and fitness programs, and those are year-round activities. So people are constantly walking between buildings. If it hadn't been for the work between Steris, the council, predominantly the city, the stoplight that exists when we purchased US Endoscopy would not exist. We had people having to cross the road and take their chances to be able to get across without being hit by an automobile or a truck or other supplies or just the general traffic that went back and forth on Heisley Road. If you recall, we collaborated with the city besides that traffic light, crosswalks, sidewalks, and other safety mechanisms that made that crossing as safe as humanly possible. And to date, I am pleased to report we have had no incidents of any injury or fatalities in that area, and it has redirected the traffic, in essence, away from that traffic that we see that would be coming as a result of the restaurant and the drive-through. The developers of the Dunkin' Donuts project have stated that they estimate more than between 250 and 300 cars a day that would utilize that restaurant. When myself and some members of council, Councilman Blake, we looked at the car traffic that starts at about 6 o'clock in the morning till about 8 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen of council, that's when our employees arrive. So adding that additional traffic, plus the cut-through that already takes place on that adjacent road, plus we have worked closely with the county health department to mitigate their cut-through and their traffic, which has quadrupled the amount of traffic already on our campus basis. And we've been very successful in working with the commissioner. We believe the vehicles will seek to exit the restaurant by cutting through our campus to utilize the traffic light. It makes, unfortunately in my mind, or fortunately in my mind, common sense. In fact, during the August 16th Planning Commission meeting, Dunkin' Donuts architect, Ms. Hunter from DH Architects stated that, and I'm quoting now, we cannot predict where people all are going to go and how they're going to drive and where they're going to drive, and how they are going to drive. We have found that people take the shortest path to their coffee in the morning. If you take a look at the drive past pattern, it would be very likely, and it's assumption that we don't want to make, that traffic will dramatically increase from the point of them going through the restaurant through the drive-through. That being the easiest way for egress and exit. And if you want to turn left or go north on Heisley, that would include cutting through our campus. So my case continues to point, cut through, drive through, increased traffic. Second, Cirrus was founded in Mentor in the mid-1980s. Initially, it was in the old Matchworks building. As the company grew, and I've been part of that for nearly 25 years, we have specifically selected the Heisley Road site for our headquarters. At this point is our North America headquarters. And again, just to repeat, we have over 2,000 employees, and we have a $6 million expansion presently going on the, I believe it's on the, Steve, on the east side of our campus. We chose that site 20-some years ago based on the standards, based on the character, based on all of the guidelines that were set in place at that particular time, that we knew that would protect our interest and the type of customers and people that we would be bringing to Mentor. And when you think about this as a, quote, corporate headquarters for North America, the number of people that we fly in on a daily basis and travel from all parts of across the country and internationally to visit our Customer Solution Center, it is a significant number of addition of traffic and people. It was picked because of the MIP zone. You make no mistake about it. And after reading and doing our own research, listening to the Planning Commission, and reading the rationale for that MIP zone, it is hard for us to understand how that restaurant would fit correctly into that particular area of parcel. There are other parcels that we think would be very useful, and we have nothing against restaurants, we have nothing against Dunkin' Donut. It's just not the best use, we believe, of the property that is adjacent to our campus. This permit use, we understand, would be the first of its kind for a drive-through under the MIP. We'd rather you not experiment with Steris with the first MIP drive-through. We've seen other areas on Heisley and the amount of traffic that has bottled up, the amount of traffic that goes back and forth, as well as the Diamond Center and the traffic already that has increased in that particular area that we also receive overflow from. We want to preserve the integrity, I think, of what was the intent, and sometimes there is, by all good reason, unintended consequences. We believe this is an unintended consequence. Thirdly, the city and council are still considering the merits of issuing permits for this project. We were notified a short time ago that the Duncan developer, along with the owner of the 5838 Heisley Road, already have submitted a variance request to the board, to the Mentor Board of Building and Zoning Appeals, with a hearing set on October 9th. The developer is seeking variances to modify both the building and the parking lot setbacks, putting this established even closer to Steris, and the city has not yet made a final decision about allowing this project, given the fact that we are meeting here this evening. There has been questions as to what other options would Steris have in egress, entrance and egress. There are none. This is a private property that we protect highly, and to make changes to that property to allow for public use just does not fit the character nor the understanding that we have for the MIP. This is a corporate headquarters. It now houses 2,000 employees with a $6.5 million expansion. That's to manage the present overflow. Our CEO reported to me just the other day when we were in Philadelphia together that on an average month, we're inviting 50 either new employees or employees that are being replaced because they've moved on or they've been promoted. All this being said, we welcome Mr. Patel to Mentor. It is a great place to invest, a great place to live, a great place to create jobs and grow your business and build future businesses. However, we object with this as the location for the reasons that I've stated and believe other and more suitable locations could be found. I appreciate your comments, your thoughts, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to respond?
Would, thank you. Couple points that were made. Steris was originally sited in this location based on the standards of the MIP zoning district. And as part of our application process, as part of our application for the conditional use permits, we submitted a trip generation study. Based on that trip generation study, the city engineer reviewed that study and determined that the traffic along Progress, the traffic that would be generated by the Dunkin' Donuts restaurant would be similar to the traffic that was previously experienced based on the building, the office industrial building that was located on this site at the point in time when Steris purchased and developed the corporate headquarters. We do not anticipate creating additional traffic flow. We selected this site based on existing traffic flow. As Ms. Hunter pointed out in the first meeting before the Planning Commission, our customers are going to seek a Dunkin' Donuts, they're going to seek their morning coffee based on the fact that we're on their existing route. We do not anticipate our customers traveling from extended periods or extended locations or rerouting their trips to work based on the location of our Dunkin' Donuts. Also, we don't anticipate any of our customers cutting through the Steris campus to get to our location. That would be an extra, I think, 3/4 of a mile is what it measured, maybe a half a mile to loop around Steris Parkway and come in the back road or in the back way on Progress We don't anticipate any traffic going through Steris, and we definitely respect Mr. Rice's concern about the pedestrian nature of the campus. As a matter of fact, prior to the meeting starting, we've actually discussed, and it was always, I guess, we discussed eliminating the left-hand turn out of the parking lot onto Progress Parkway. Our anticipation is that our customers would exit either right out of our parking lot onto Heisley or right out of our parking lot onto Progress, and then make a right or left onto Heisley Road. The other point that I would respond with is a lot of assumptions made by Steris. There are no traffic studies that have been performed to indicate that our customers would, in fact, go through a closed campus to loop around to enter the Dunkin' Donuts from the back road. So those would be our additional rebuttal points. Thank you.
Thank you. Council is in receipt of all correspondence received pertaining to this matter. This public hearing is adjourned. Ordinance number 18-0-078.
Mr. President,
Oh, I think we have to do 8.
Oh, what?
84.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one here. An ordinance authorizing the issuance of a conditional use permit to allow a drive-through facility for a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant at 5834 Heisley Road in the MIP Industrial Park District by Bhavesh Patel and Viviani family. I've read it for you. That's still a public hearing. Sorry, anyone, is the applicant here? We know the applicant is here. Do you want any comments on the drive-through? Okay, does anyone wishing to speak? I'm sorry.
We would just, I guess, restate our existing.
Okay, thank you.
points. Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? I think we've heard your, have we heard your comments?
You've heard our comments.
Thank you. Okay. Council is in receipt of all correspondence received pertaining to this matter. The public hearing is adjourned. Now we'll get to ordinance. Ordinance number 18-0-078. Pardon?
Do I read it? It's remaining table.
I think you should read it.
An ordinance approving the final subdivision plat of 17 residential lots in the Creekside Farm subdivision and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mr. Blake?
the developer would like to have this remain on the table for now.
Second. Okay. Council? We don't have to do that, so, okay, moving right on. Ordinance number 18-0-082.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Mentor 2006 as amended and the official zoning map by rezoning of approximately .19 acre of land from B2 General Business District to R2 Single Family Residential District at 8619 Mentor Avenue and 7359 Maple Street and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
With nothing further to add, Mr. President, from the public hearing comments.
Any questions from council?
Motion to approve?
Suspend.
Suspend, motion to suspend, sorry.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
just a footnote with respect to what just transpired, so that people understand that we rezoned a piece of commercial property to residential, period. Other outstanding issues that residents in the neighborhood may have, or our building department may have, or whatever, are still forthcoming. So I don't want to think, what, did we just ram this down someone's throat? But it's actually a positive rezoning, because we've done this before,
in other areas where we've taken commercial property and rezoned portions of it to residential. So, thank you.
Thank you for that
Mr. President.
clarification. Yes, sir.
Mr. President? Right, straight ahead.
Right, I'm looking.
Thank you. I just add to Councilman Kirschner's comments, just, for the benefit of the residents that did show up this evening. Any reoccupancy of that building would have to meet all applicable building codes of Ohio. And so we don't know if it's appropriate for residential use or not, but certainly a lot of things would have to be changed in order for that to happen. So whoever purchases that lot may decide it's just not worth the investment and takes it down on their own. So time will tell, but there's no guarantee that that structure will end up as a residential unit.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Moving right along. Ordinance number 18-0-83.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance of a conditional use permit to allow a restaurant at 5834 Heisley Road in the MIP Industrial Park District by Bavish Patel and the Viviani Family Limited Partnership.
Mr. Filippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're certainly available to answer any questions that haven't been brought up at the hearing so far.
I know several of the council people had a question concerning the MIP and how this works into this whole scenario. So could you or a member of your staff clarify or enlighten everybody?
Sure. Well, again, council has several different districts within which there are permitted uses predominantly for industrial development. The MIP district, I would probably characterize as your gold standards for industrial parks. If you look at, I don't have that, Mr. San Pedro, if you could bring that up quickly, but if you read that text, I'm not quoting from it, but it essentially talks about higher quality aesthetic standards and higher quality architectural standards. It seeks to find uniformity and create a sense of place that is a little bit higher standard than what you would see in your M1 and M2 districts. So the uses that are before you in these two ordinances are, of course, conditional uses. And there is a list of conditional uses, but I think in this particular MIP area, you don't have a lot of uses there that match up with what we might think of as predominantly commercial in nature. Let me read to you from this. The MIP district, this district is intended to provide for the creation of industrial parks within which there is a harmony of architecture and landscaping and a special emphasis on aesthetic quality. And of course, there are as well those standards that would apply to any conditional use, which we haven't yet talked about.
Okay. Any questions? No questions?
Mr. President, with respect to the use itself in the MIP district, I had some questions and concerns. This is sort of our first foray, if you will, of this type of use in a MIP district with a drive-through. And I know that's not the part we're discussing right now, but we allow restaurants in the MIP district. We also allow drive-through by condition. And I guess from a definition standpoint, are we defining, as all I've heard is coffee and donuts? You know, are we defining that as a restaurant going forward, and as we want to be interpreted? And secondly, does this, in keeping with the harmony as the code calls for, is it in harmony, and will it adversely affect the use of the neighborhood properties? Will it adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhood? Will it change the character of the neighborhood? Again, I think if we're going to say that a Dunkin' Donuts is an acceptable use as a restaurant in the MIP district going forward, we're going to be stuck with it for future people that want to come before it, because we've set a precedence. There was another restaurant in the MIP district, I think it was called Isofano's, a number of years ago. That was a restaurant. It was a sit-down restaurant with menus and orders. And, tables and whatnot, but this sort of, to me, lends itself to more to retail and quick service rather than a restaurant. And, you know, you've got a 2,000 square foot piece of property on, I'm not sure what the acreage, I think it's on 2 acres, and which is taking up a lot of parking space to accommodate the drive-through, which is, I think, 12 spaces of stacking. And then you add an additional 200-plus cars onto Heisley Road in the morning rush hour. That left-hand turn, I think during the middle of the day is hard enough to make. And then I suppose the first couple times people use Heisley Road to try to turn left, eventually they may get, let's go the other way because I can hit a light at Steris. That's just my own thought on that. I don't have any facts to back that up, but it's called human nature. So those are my concerns with this type of use going forward. And again, I think it's more of a traditional donut shop, coffee shop setting in retail rather than a restaurant. And that's what the MIP district calls for. And if we're going to have issues where we're going to approve this type of use of a restaurant, so-called restaurant, in the MIP district, we should probably get it right off the bat. So in the future, you know, we don't have precedent set that we said, okay, you can bring a donut shop in or a coffee shop into the MIP district. So, thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. President,
Mr.
question I guess for
Martin.
administration. I mean, MIP is literally our smallest of the manufacturing type of designations that we have on the books.
Most restrictive.
And
Most restrictive.
Most restrictive. But I guess what I'm leading up to is that when we have our other segments in our, and I know we're looking, especially with arrival of, you know, Kathy Mitchell, we're re-looking at all our zoning and things of that nature. Not only being more restrictive, should we have a better vision so that we're more specific of what we want these certain areas to look at in the future? Because I don't want to waste anyone's time and money in through all this, you know, not only tonight, but also in the future. Because when I read the MIP stuff, I think of a campus, you know, like Steris. I always refer to it as manufacturing palace, you know, our top of the line, so to speak, and that's how I always remember it. But I mean, do we need to get more specific in nature for this going forward? And is this part of something that you guys have talked about, especially with the arrival of Kathy?
Well, that's a good question, Councilman, and I would say that I think it's always a good idea for us to be reviewing our standards and our permitted uses, our conditional uses. That hasn't been done for quite a while in our code, and is one of the goals that I know the planning director has moving forward in cooperation with the law department. But I think that from just from a practical application of our code as it exists today, one of the things that I know that we strive for as an administration, I know that this council has always striven for, is this issue of harmony. And you see that, we mentioned it, there's a specific reference in the MIP district. When you go to the conditional use section of the code, which specifically talks about those considerations that the Planning Commission should have, and in this instance, you are reviewing the actions of the commission. But the first one is, will it be in harmony with the use of the neighboring properties? And while I think we can appreciate the fact that there are other similar uses like this on Heisley Road, the administration would submit that I think you want to be looking at this within that district. It's not a matter of if there's other fast food restaurants or restaurants of any type for that matter on Heisley. I think that the question I think before you is, are there similar uses within the neighbors within the MIP? And you know, that's a little bit more of a stretch to make. Again, this is a question. In fact, we go out of our way, and you'll see the administration's recommendations and council and the Planning Commission typically have tried to go out of their way to protect those type of uses zone to zone. So when we have a commercial district butting up to a residential district, we take great pains to try to make sure that there are proper buffering and that there's proper, larger setbacks than would be between two, say, B2 properties. So, you know, in this case, what are you looking for with any conditional use permit? Will it be in harmony with or adversely affect the use of the neighboring properties, number one? Will it adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhood? Will it change the character of the neighborhood? So these can be somewhat subjective, but I think those are borne out by looking at what else is there. And, you know, I mean, we would submit that council's deliberation has to rest, at least in part, with looking at, are there other things there on other portions, not on IZ Road or in adjoining B2 districts, but within that MIP, that are very close in nature to this applicant or any applicant that comes before you. You know, these are the things that we try to look at and offer in our staff comments, and at the end of the day, you just have to make that judgment call.
Mr. President,
Yes.
if I could, I just wanted to kind of expand on Councilman Kirchner's comments. When I first started looking at this, and you know, I really realized that this is sort of the first one with a drive-through, and how important it is to get it right, this restaurant. So as I started looking at Dunkin' Donuts and the definition that we have in our code of a restaurant, which is pretty liberal, I started thinking that maybe this was more of a retail establishment. And I'm not sure if this Dunkin' Donuts would be making the donuts on site, or if they're just shipped in from a manufacturer and placed on a shelf. I think if that was the scenario, then that would definitely make it a retail establishment. So maybe as we move forward and we look at placing restaurants with a drive-through, especially if the drive-through is going to be arguably a large portion of what the restaurant will do, maybe we should look at a stronger definition of a restaurant, maybe a few different levels, a counter-type restaurant, or sit-down service, cooked on-site sort of restaurant. So in my mind, I consider a Dunkin' Donuts to probably be more of a retail establishment as opposed to a restaurant. And, you know, that's up for argument, but that's my feeling. So it is important that we get it right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. President?
Ms. Stelling?
I own a manufacturing facility in Mentor, and we moved it to Mentor from Euclid in 1989. And we started looking at different industrial parks, and one of the things, we had different criteria. And we met with the developer in one park, and as we talked about what our goals were, he basically told us, he said, I think you would be a better fit in another park. And we were looking for a park that had 3-side brick, no additional sheds, garages, or anything like that. It was restricted, no auto bodies, no body shops, no car repairs. And we also wanted to be, you know, we have chemicals in our business, so we wanted to be good neighbors. We did not want to have to go through residential to get to our business. And we did spend a lot of time researching and made that decision. We did that in 1989, and we're very happy we did it. We think we're not in the MIP district, but we're in a very nice industrial park. It has been maintained. There have been no changes, and the developer was true to his word, and everything was kept that way. And it has meant a lot for our property values. Even when property values were down, ours maintained. And so I can definitely understand. I myself personally would be upset if there was something to change in our industrial park. So I think it's really important when we talk about the aesthetics of the neighborhood, as Mr. Filipiak said. And I think that that's just a very critical thing. These are major investments. And it's a major investment for Dunkin' Donuts. It's certainly a major investment for Sterry Corporation. I think we have to take all of that into consideration.
Thank you, thank you. Any other comments? Do your motion?
Move to suspend.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second. Julie? No?
You can't say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll second since you can't.
I can try.
Try.
Mr. Landig?
In that this use changes the character of the neighborhood, I vote no.
Mr. Marne?
No.
Blake?
No.
Mr. Donovan?
No.
Mrs. Dowling?
No.
Mr. Kirchner?
No.
Mr. Krieger?
No. Ordinance number 18-0-083 has not passed. Ordinance number 18-0-084.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance of a conditional use permit to allow a drive-through facility for a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant at 5834 Heisley Road in the MIP Industrial Park District by Bhavesh Patel and the Viviani Family Limited Partnership.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
No.
No.
Yes, to suspend. Excuse me.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Landig?
No.
Mr. Marne?
No.
Mr. Blake?
No.
Mr. Donovan?
No.
Mrs. Dowling?
No.
Mr. Kirchner?
No.
Mr. Krieger?
No. 18-0-084 has failed. Ordinance number 18-0-085.
An ordinance to revise the codified ordinances of the City of Mentor 2006 as amended by adopting current replacement pages and declaring an emergency.
Mr.
I'll
Philipp.
take this.
Okay. Mr. Henning.
Well, as you know, we update our green book and our online code 4 times a year approximately, and this does that. This takes all of the legislation that you have passed recently of a general and permanent nature, code revisions to, various sections, and it causes them to be published in the Green Book, the Mentor Code of Ordinances, and also to appear online so the person searching our code will see them as they have been amended and/or adopted by you. If you look through here at what they have, it kind of gives you a reminder of the things that you've done: tree regulations, animals not under control, drive or drive-through facilities, small cell facilities. All of those are now incorporated permanently into the Mentor Code of Ordinances and will be located in the book and online so that people can see them. And this legislation formally does that and asks the Walter Drain Company, who services the city for this purpose, to go and in effect do that.
Council, what's your pleasure?
Suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig? Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake? Yes. Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Ordinance number 18-0-085 has passed. Ordinance number 18-0-086.
An ordinance to authorize revisions to appropriations and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Malinowski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. Members of council, this does 2 revisions to the city's appropriations for the current year. Firstly, a $15,000 increase is appropriated to the Plaza Boulevard Extension engineering component of that project. It's the final engineering bill. And that money is coming from the construction portion, so net effect 0 on the total. And then there's also a $10,000 increase in appropriations to the subdivision tree planting fund, and that's for fall planting over at Newell Creek. I would recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, council.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig? Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Ordinance number 18-0-086 is passed. Resolution number 18-R-118.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to file an application and enter into an agreement with the Ohio Public Works Commission for the purchase of acquiring funds through the State Capital Improvement Program for the Hendricks Road, Hopkins Road resurfacing project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this ordinance and the next one are our final applications. I will I'm happy to inform council that we have been approved for funding through the county committee, and these recommendations at the county level will be forwarded to the District 7 integrating committee, which meets tomorrow, and I'll certainly be voting to support these as well. So we have two projects. The first one is resurfacing portions of Hendricks Road, for which we expect to receive a $149,900 grant and $50,000 zero-interest loan. Mr. Swigger.
I would just like to mention that the project will resurface Hendricks Road between State Route 2 and White Oak Drive, as well as two sections of Hopkins Road between Hendricks Road and Market Street, including the section between Hendricks and Rosewood and Pinewood to Market. And the deadline to file application is October 15th. Thank you.
That Ward 4, isn't it? I think the next one is too.
It might be.
All of them are.
Helps to be president, isn't it?
Council, what's your pleasure?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig.
Yes.
Mr. Marne.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling.
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig.
Yes.
Mr. Marne.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling.
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes. Resolution number 18-R-118 is passed. Resolution number 18-R-119.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to file an application and enter into an agreement with the Ohio Public Works Commission for the purpose of acquiring funds through the State Capital Improvement Program for the Bell Meadow Road reconstruction project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. And yes, Ward 4 is the lucky lottery winner here. This is Phase 3 of our Headlands Road reconstruction program. The very patient residents along Marigold are very soon going to be seeing the resurfacing occur there, and then shortly thereafter we'll be getting started in full force on Orchard. This is the third phase, again, a complete reconstruction of Bell Meadow Road. It's a $2.9 million project in total, for which we expect to receive $500,000 in grant funds and a $150,000 loan. And Mr. Swigger, the little project detail, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. In addition to reconstructing the entire length of Bell Meadow Road, which is about 4,000 feet in length, the project also includes the lining of the sanitary sewer main and point repair of sanitary sewer laterals over the same length. And as before, the approval requires that the City Council authorize the city manager to file the final application and execute the contracts. The deadline for this application is the same, October 15th, and construction is anticipated to begin in the summer of 2019. Thank you.
One more thing to add, Council. Again, I want to express our appreciation to the Lake County Department of Utilities, who has agreed to move forward with this project with us, so that the lining, they've done a very good job of agreeing to our timeline on trying to make these improvements. And while a portion of this grant funding goes to that, still the majority of it will still be paid for by the Utilities Department. So we appreciate that cooperation.
Thank you. Council?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig.
Yes.
Mr. Marne.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling.
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig.
Yes.
Mr. Marne.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling.
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes. Resolution number 18-R-119 has passed. Resolution number 18-R-120.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Transportation for Livable Communities Initiative Program and to execute contracts as required.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this is a NOACA program that we are trying to take advantage of to improve a small portion of our future bike program. And I have Mr. Bruckman here this evening to offer some details.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I think the packet, I tried to make the packet as clear and descriptive as possible, but just one other particular comment about this particular program. This program provides, in this particular funding round, $1.6 million in terms of funding that's going to be distributed for projects in a 5-county area. That being said, part of our strategy was to pick a roadway segment that was strategically significant to our bikeway plan, but small enough so that we would not make our ask seem overly large, and in that regard, perhaps discount us in terms of how we would score compared to the many, many other applications that are going to be submitted. Last year, more than $4.5 million in asks were made for a similar funding amount. Therefore, we had to be a little strategic in terms of asking for funding for this project. This project consists of 2 segments, as you could see in the maps. It's a portion, 900 linear feet of Headlands Road and about 2,500 linear feet of Jordan Drive. The funding required to slightly widen that portion of Jordan Drive is beyond the scope of what this program could provide. We will seek funding through other programs, but as a temporary expedient, we wish to, within this particular proposal, have some sort of painted markings on that section of Jordan Drive, because otherwise we feel that in terms of how this proposal will be scored by the review committee, it may be seen as being deficient. I just wanted to make that point, that the portion of this project that calls for painting along a portion of Jordan Drive is meant to be seen as a temporary measure while we seek funding from other sources to widen the road slightly, as we are proposing to do in this proposal for Headlands Road.
Thank you. I want to point out, I really appreciate, this actually completes along Jordan and Headlands Road, the path all the way down to the state park, makes it a safer location for bicyclists and walkers. Anything else?
Again, just to reinforce Mr. Bruckman's point, you know, the portion on this grant that would widen would only be about a little over 800 feet on Headlands, and that segment in the middle, the other second phase, which we've always which we refer to in our cap plan as phase 2 of the Jordan widening, will be painted for the Sharrow. But down the road, when we see a more generous grant program with a little lower, I should say, percentage of local match, we'll go after that widening money at that point. But as a temporary expedient, to Mr. Bruckman's point, you're right, Mr. Krieger, you're right. It's exactly the intent, is to provide that connection between the Headlands and the state park.
Thank you. Council?
Suspend.
Second?
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landing?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake? Yes. Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second?
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan? Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Resolution number 18-R-120 has passed. Second reading, we have none. Third reading, we have none. Manager's report. Sorry, there was one added at the last minute. We did ordinance number 18.
It's
I'm sorry.
nothing.
It's nothing.
It's nothing.
We
Not
just
that
skip
important.
over that one. This was added as amended to the agenda.
This couldn't have worked out any better.
Ordinance number 18-0-087.
An ordinance appointing Joseph P. Zeman, Law Director of the City of Mentor, and declaring an emergency.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
No debate?
Oh, no debate.
Mr. Landing?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr.
Julie?
President,
Yes,
Sorry,
Mr.
I don't know
Marne.
if you call this a debate, Mr. Henning, but I guess a different viewpoint. First of all, Joe, welcome aboard. I know you're going to make a great law director, and you got big shoes to fill.
Thanks, sir.
Personally, I feel that we should be more proactive with this position. It should be a full-time law director. Years ago, 15 years ago, we were a $25 million budget. We're now a $71 million budget. You added in everything else, we're a $110 million corporation. In discussion with department heads, city manager, outside city managers, outside council people, township trustees, and even watching the news with the amount of things that go on, especially when it comes to our men and women in blue, especially after we lost a dear one this year. It's like I feel we have to be as proactive as humanly possible. And when we went in the new direction back when we hired Mr. Hennig, before, at that time, council at that time, seemed like we made a joke of things because we used so many outside different law firms. And it was almost like our law director at that time was a law broker. And when we started out with a lawsuit, it's like, okay, who's handling this one now? And Mr. Hennig has done a great job with Mr. Zeman over the last 15 years, Richard? 15 or so years, cleaning things up and getting us to run as smoothly as humanly possible. But with a full-time law director, it's even becoming, in my view, more proactive, where we have that individual not only helping out each and every single department head in their respective departments, helping out our police force, helping out our fire force, but also helping out council so that we can make the appropriate decisions and the right decisions so we keep ourselves out of trouble. And by doing that, in the long run, we're saving ourselves more money. I'd also would like to see the law director being more proactive in terms of economic development, where they are on our international initiative, where that individual is on our domestic initiative. Because we all know from history in this city, it's all about jobs. Companies such as Steris risen out of a one-man or two-man shop, I should say, in the mid-'80s to 2,000 employees now here in 2018. And us coming from a budget of 25 million to over 71 million and being a corporation of 110 million, we need to be as proactive as humanly possible. And the only way to do that is set that position as a full-time job, because with any athlete, any football team, any sports team, anything that we do, there's a job description and you have to achieve that goal. And a lot of times it's set higher than a person could possibly achieve. But if you don't set that description at that appropriate height, you're never going to come close. And we all have to achieve that. We all have to move forward. But once again, I welcome you to the position. You're doing a great job. You're extremely knowledgeable, been a good friend for 15 years. But with that, with us being still a part-time position, I politely vote no.
Did we have a second?
Yeah, I did. I second it.
But I haven't started.
Okay, call the
You
roll.
didn't finish the roll call.
I haven't started.
Go ahead and call.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
No.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Thank you, Council.
Now, manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council, and congratulations, Mr. Seaman. Look forward to working with you and echo the comments that one of the other councilmen made. Big shoes to fill, and we've had a great relationship with the law department for a long time. I know that will continue. The Forbes House has designated October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we have joined them in displaying purple ribbons along Civic Center Boulevard in show of our city's support. Forbes House is the only domestic violence shelter in Lake County where domestic violence survivors can heal and rebuild their lives and eventually find long-term safe housing through Forbes House efforts with government and nonprofit local agencies. And I will add to that, council is aware that we do fund them in part with a portion of our CDBG dollars every year. Roadway work has begun for the construction of the right turn lane on Center Street into the city market site. Currently, the contractor is working on relocated drive entrances at Stadium Grill Plaza and the new city market entrance on Tyler Boulevard, as well as the classic Chevy entrance on Center Street. Work will continue through the fall as utility relocation permits. City's contractor JTL will begin clearing the project site on Wednesday, tomorrow, October 3rd, for the Rice Detention Basin. An excavation of the basin will follow soon after. We estimate that it will take approximately 4 weeks to substantially complete the excavation. The project will be substantially complete by mid-November, and some minor touch-up and restoration is expected in the spring of 2019. Again, which is great because we get to take advantage, we'll have that in place and be able to take advantage of it with the heavier spring rains that we typically see. Removal of the old traffic signal infrastructure continues on Menor Avenue. New signage will be placed this week, and final paving and striping is expected to occur the week of October 8th. The Lake Health Northern Ohio Marathon takes place this Sunday, October 7th. The race begins at 8 a.m., and a large portion of the race goes through the northern section of Mentor, so minor traffic delays may be experienced. All roads should be cleared by noon. And finally, this is National Fire Prevention Week is October 7th through the 13th. This year's safety theme is Look, Listen, Learn. A fire can happen anywhere. And as a part of fire prevention, public education specialist Jerry Craddock will be teaching third graders safety lessons during their visits to Menor Safety Village throughout the month of October. And then finally, Mr. President, if I could request a short executive session on property purchase this evening, I would appreciate it.
Mr. Henny got a comment on that.
I was asked about that, and I'm of the opinion that that's a matter that could be either handled in a work session or in open session. It is a subject that we discussed quite extensively in a work session just recently, the whole concept. And so I'm, being a little nervous Nelly, I just don't think I want to see an executive session on that point and, take any chances that someone might think that we didn't have a good reason. I mean, I understand, but I disagree a little bit on whether we can do that.
Would certainly accept your position on that. And
So do you want to wait for a workshop, or you want to discuss it this evening, or?
well, I'll have some further discussion with the law director, because some of this may touch on a potential negotiation, which is a different element, but I think it's probably appropriate for me to consult with him before. The matter can wait.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Are you complete with your report?
That's it, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. President? Have we got a firm date for the dedication of Springbrook Park Gardens
Yes,
Park?
I expected, Councilman, that you would bring that up. I had a discussion earlier today with Mr. Kaminsky and Mr. Swigger. What we have is an assurance from the contractor that our paving would be completed by October 30th. We don't think that it probably will be by the 23rd, which is your next scheduled council meeting. So I leave it up to council to decide if you would like to have that dedication nearer the 30th, but perhaps not a council night. We just can't anticipate that he'll be done. And our goal on that was to be able to dedicate and open the park in the same day. A dedication can certainly go forward without the opening. I'll throw that out there, though, for discussion.
Well, it's a shame. I understand that you've got paving issues there, but now we're going to wind up having it in trench coats and overcoats, probably blowing winds and maybe rain in the dark, as opposed to now. So, I mean, it's unfortunate because I would like to see a lot of the residents be able to come out and enjoy it, and that all the walkways would have been completed by now. But is there some kind of delay that they kept delaying the project? I mean,
well, again, they're still the contractor's still well within their schedule, so they haven't exceeded that timeline yet. They did have some subcontractor issue that required them to get a new one, and so that's the issue. Now, again, throwing this out there as an option, you could schedule it for the 23rd in the hopes that it would be completed by then. If it's not, you could just open the park a week later, but still have the dedication. And I feel pretty confident that there'd be some opportunity to get in there and see at least a portion of it. We were just somewhat reluctant to want to give the impression that a dedication it was also the opening, because we're just a little concerned about residents going in there with construction activities still ongoing.
And just to clarify, then, you said the next regular meeting is the 23rd, and we actually have a typo on our agenda today that says the 18th, but the actual next regular scheduled meeting is October 16th.
Well, it won't be ready by the 16th, I can assure you of that.
Either, I got that, but I just want the public to know the next regular scheduled meeting is October 16th.
Mr. President, as a footnote to that, there's nothing that says we have to have it on the night of
Right.
a meeting either, so.
Right, I understand that. We can have a dedication at any time
Yep.
and put it out to the public.
And it could be during the day, I suppose, it doesn't have to be at night, so,
Okay.
thank you.
Commission and, clerk's correspondence.
Is in receipt of new liquor permit for Shakar and Oinos LLC, DBA Noah's Mentor, and also in receipt of liquor permit transfer for Outback Steakhouse of Florida LLC, DBA Outback Steakhouse on Market Street, to Outback Steakhouse of Florida LLC, DBA Outback Steakhouse on Plaza Boulevard. Council is also in receipt of Mentor Municipal Court month-end report for August of 2018.
Thank you, Julie. Commission and committee reports, we have the meeting minutes for the Municipal Planning Commission for September 6th, 2018. Old business, we have none.
Mr. President, if I could,
Yes.
just a quick question. Ken, Hopkins Road resurfacing, seems how we're talking about resurfacing and asphalt, and it's getting late in the season. Is that scheduled to begin this week, hopefully?
You know, I could say it's scheduled to start this week. It's going to take place in October and November, so we got about a month's worth of work.
Yeah.
But I could surely give you a more definite starting date later this week.
Dave, the end date of that project is what, do you recall? It was November.
Right now, it's just sometime in November, but I can.
The only clue that I have that something's
The
getting ready to
19th.
happen is there's a sign that says bump. And it's an orange triangular sign, and I said, that's a good sign that Hopkins is going to get resurfaced. But since then, nothing else has happened, so.
You're going to see a lot
just-
happening.
Just a bump, warning me about a bump that's not even there yet, so.
Soon, yeah. but
So-
As we get closer and closer to the shutdown of the asphalt plants, you're going to see a lot of activity all around the county.
I know, and that's getting close. It's October, so it is still going to be done this year, correct?
Yes.
Because I think bus drivers and a lot of people are waiting. So,
But
thank
yes,
you.
As soon as I get word from the contractor on the start date, I'll forward that on.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. President, just one comment on that, Mr.
Yes.
Blake. Again, it's a good reminder that while we appreciate the OPWC dollars that we get, again, the state is on a July 1 start of their fiscal year, so when we get our contracts, we can't proceed forward even with the advertising until after July 31st? July 1st. And so that really crunches in the timeline for any one construction season.
Just don't want to see it
Be
with
nice to bid
snow,
that out in the spring like we do the rest of our work.
asphalt and snow mixing together. Thank you.
Thank you. New business, none. Now we go to persons before council. And I see, Mr. Lima, that we've got three people want to talk on the same topic. Is there any way you can consolidate that, or?
I understand it, we have 4 minutes.
Yes.
And each of us will take less than that.
Okay.
Thank you, members of council. We have been unsuccessful in engaging in dialogue with various members of the city administration concerning Mentor Police Department's immigration violation policy. Councilman Blake suggested we bring our concerns and our recommendations to council. First, it's important to remind council, Ohio's Constitution and revised code provides municipalities with home rule and gives city councils the authority to determine policy for their police departments. we would expect council to take this responsibility seriously, not to defer to the police chief, city manager, or the law director, but to confer with them. Some background. It is not a crime for an undocumented person to remain in the United States. It is a misdemeanor to be in the United States without legal documentation, punishable by civil penalties, not criminal penalties. Undocumented immigrants have due process rights. Due process rights secured by our Constitution are frequently violated by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE. As enshrined in the 5th and the 14th Amendments and found in Zadias versus David in 2001, the due process clause applies to all persons within the United States, whether their presence is lawful, unlawful, temporary, or permanent. In addition, it is important to note that the federal government cannot require local law enforcement agencies to participate in immigration enforcement, nor can it require communication with ICE. So, Mentor's Immigration Violation Policy 41.21Z has 5 parts. We are concerned with parts A and B. We are not concerned with parts C, D, and E. So, Mentor's Immigration Policy Part A. Officers will only inquire into a person's citizenship if that person is arrested and in custody for either criminal charges or traffic charges requiring the posting of bond. We would recommend replacing it with the following. Police officers are not to inquire into immigration status when they are engaged in their regular police duties. However, if a person is arrested and in custody for criminal charges, the officer may inquire into a person's citizenship. Officers also should be required to clearly state to the person that the person does not have to answer. Thank you. That concludes my part.
Before you leave, can you state your name and address, full name and address for the
Yes,
record?
I thought you had it on the...
It's on the form, but it's got to go on the record.
Dave Lima, 7774 Litchfield Drive.
Thank you. Next is Janet Oliver.
Janet Oliver, my address is 6631 Memory Lane. Ohio is part of the federal government's Secure Communities program, making item B of Mentor's policy unnecessary. It states, when the officer checks the immigration status through ICE or the Border Patrol, and a determination is made that that person is in the country illegally, the officer shall give the federal officer the date and time of the subject's court appearance, and if the subject is expected to make bond. In Ohio, once a person is fingerprinted, it is sent to the FBI, immediately shared with the Department of Homeland Security and with ICE. It is then up to ICE to determine whether they engage in further immigration enforcement activities, not local law enforcement agencies. It may be a violation of privacy statutes by providing such personal information. A comment on the web of databases, related systems, and information sharing mechanisms that facilitate and enhance immigration enforcement. The web is vast and complex, a total of 14, not including state and local criminal justice networks, databases, and technologies. Besides the FBI's and Homeland Security's biometric identity databases and the National Crime Enforcement Center databases, there are federal and state gang databases, mobile database, Homeland Security's Falcon tip line, and others. We would recommend that item B be stricken from Mentor's policy. As mentioned previously, we are in agreements with Part C, D, and E. Part C, if we receive an Immigration Form 247 hold, we will not detain the subject once bond has been posted or they are released by the court. These forms are civil in nature and we are under no obligation to honor them. Therefore, no one will remain in custody solely for the purpose of an immigration holder. Part D, we will not detain the subject if we receive just a Form I-200. This form is a civil detainment form and does not constitute an arrest warrant for a criminal violation of the United States immigration laws. Part E, unless we receive an arrest warrant that indicates the subject is to be detained on the basis of a criminal violation of the immigration law, the subject should be released after posting bond on the local charges or has been released by the court. And that's the end of my portion.
Thank you.
Council members, I am Michael Oliver, 6631 Memory Lane. Finally, we would like to comment on an event that took place in Mentor on June 14th, 2017, that resulted in Francisco Pioquinto being deported from the police report. The driver of the victim vehicle was transported to Tri-Point Hospital by Painesville Township Fire Department prior to our arrival on the scene. The passenger in the vehicle, Veronica Hernandez, did not know the driver's information, and the vehicle was returned to Maria Gomez. We went to Tri-Point Hospital and met with the driver, who was identified as Francisco Pioquinto. Pioquinto does not have a driver's license and admitted to being an illegal immigrant. My comment: this information would not have been voluntarily made if the officer had not asked, and the officer likely did not advise Pioquinto that he did not have to answer. The report goes on. We contacted ICE agent Kevin Hardy, who confirmed Pioquinto's identity and confirmed that he was an illegal immigrant. Tri-Point Hospital staff advised that Pioquinto was being transported to Metro Health due to a fractured vertebrae in his neck. Per Sergeant Richards, we issued him a citation for no operator's license, an unclassified misdemeanor. Agent Hardy advised that Pioquinto was being added to their hot list for deportation. Within 2 weeks, Francisco was subsequently deported with a broken neck to Nuevo Laredo, one of the highest crime areas in the Mexican border. Held for hostage by a gang until his family paid $3,500 for his release, and all for being in this country without documentation, a misdemeanor, and for driving without a license, a misdemeanor. And all because of police inquiry about citizenship status in a non-criminal situation. I think we all would agree that this was a tragedy for Francisco, his family, this country, and the rule of law. We ask that you implement these changes we have suggested in the Mentor Police Department immigration policy. Thank you.
Thank you. We then have Grant, not sure if I can, Parson?
My name's Grant Adamson, at 7260 Hopkins Road. So if that paving goes through, bless you. I don't know if it goes up that far or if it extends that far, but if it does, terrific work. I'm here, I have just a couple of questions. I'm not even sure how to proceed. I ride a hand cycle through the city streets of Mentor. Most of the time it's on a street, on a curb, on the side of the road. I try to have somebody with me at all times because I sit rather low on the road. I've been here now 15 years, and I'm not seeing any changes or additions to, let's call them bike paths, where they're being either resurfaced or extended or joined. I was really concerned when I rode this summer through the city of Mentor trying to get to the Headlands Beach. I live on Hopkins. So you can imagine there's a bike path that starts on Hopkins, goes down Hopkins Road. They shut out the bridge this year and said we're going to redo the bridge surface. So you ride down sidewalks to try and go around that. You end up going down Shore by the Shore Middle School. I don't know if you've ridden a bike on that road or walked on that road, but I'm safer riding on the road. You know, it's really bad. It's been not surfaced. As you go down through the back of the municipal center here, you go down through there's like a little gully there. Just as a recommendation to council and to the city itself, they should send somebody down there to sweep off that path every time there's a rain. I ride on 3 wheels. People that are riding on 2 wheels are when you go down there at any kind of speed, you hit the bottom of that thing and it's covered in sand and slides off. Somebody's going to end up in the river or the creek down there. It's just not being treated or cared for, I guess. Where do I start? How do I get started on either, is there any thought when there's a new road put in or a new, like we did, this brand new road on Isley overpass, there's no bike path at all. So how as a city do you start joining some of these bike paths and making them for commuters as well?
Well, I think you saw part of that tonight where we're adding them on to Jordan.
Right.
Down to,
Sitting next
and
to
that's
the
the
jump.
second phase. They're on the first part from Corduroy down to Rambler, and now that we're completing that down from Rambler down to Headland, Headland's down to the State Park. Actually, probably somebody who could speak more intelligently about this than me would be Councilman Kirchner.
Well, you're correct about a few things. I think one thing we can do, and probably we'll be discussing shortly, is our budget. And you're correct, the stretch from Plains down to Shore there's a lot of root issues that, you know, I ride a road bike, so I don't ride on the bike path, I ride in the road. It's like you
Right.
said, it's
But
safe.
there's no
Road bikes aren't made for those bike paths. But in your case, you're correct, it's pretty bad as far as, and I think Ken's already aware that I brought that up, that, you know, I'd like to discuss that during our budget meetings. Hendricks will, or the Hendricks, what's the other one that you mentioned?
Jordan or Headland?
Well, the other, where the bridge is out, okay.
Hopkins. Oh,
The
Hopkins.
Hopkins Bridge, that should be complete this year yet, no, I think?
Yeah, actually, not, this one, the Hopkins will be done this month, yeah.
19th.
So that bike lane will be, you'll have access that way, and of course, going over the Hopkins Bridge, then you'll be able to access the bike. And again, his issue with, you know, down there in the bike lane area, or the bike path area behind the Civic Center, you know, it could use some maintenance from time to time.
Mr. President, just a couple of comments, a few general comments. I mean, we do maintenance on the bike paths, and much like road maintenance, you can't get to all of it at once, and we did some improvements on Lakeshore Boulevard this year. I had just earlier in the evening, you may have heard me speak about, and council passed legislation for the resurfacing of a portion of Hendricks next year, and I've asked our public service director and the engineer to take a look at doing an alternate bid for repaving that section of bike path on Hendricks, because it's looking pretty beat up as well. Reality is, we don't do much bike path anymore. We're doing more bike lanes, which is extension of the roadway, because at the end of the day, that's where we can usually get funding, grant funding for.
That'd be truly awesome. I'm just saying, if you're riding from, you know, Greenway to Greenway, you're riding on the shoulder of a road.
Sure.
You know, and even if the distinction was put down that you know, bike paths or share with the road or something like that, right now it's just dangerous.
Sure. We can, I'll see to it that if you could see Mr. Swigger, this gentleman here to my right, if we can get your email, we can send you a visual copy of the city's long-term bike path and bike lane program. It'll take a long time for that to be fully built out, and quite frankly, we usually try to fund bike paths or lanes with grant dollars that are made available to us, or at least a portion of it. Tonight, we passed a resolution to apply for a little section about 900 feet on in the Headlands and Headlands Road, but even that was a 50-50 match. So the reality is bike paths, bike lanes cost as much as a new road does.
Right.
And so when you put, 5 feet on one side and 5 feet on the other, you're essentially adding a new driving lane. And I think Mr. Blake has been looking for Hopkins to get, have a bike lane added to that. And Dave, what did we estimate that improvement just between Menor Avenue and 84 was?
700,000?
Yeah.
So 700,000 or 800,000. So
You need to write a check and then we're.
we take it, but we're working on it. I appreciate you bringing up the maintenance issues. We'll take a look at that right away.
I mean, I'm just saying, just for your own protection, I mean, somebody's gonna hit the bottom of that thing and have a serious accident.
Well, that's something we can do
And
and
I think
should
it
stay on
happens
top
after
of.
every rain. Like when there's a rain, it just washes all of the sand down into the bottom there. And as you go down, you kind of slide. Anybody on a two-wheel bike, personally, I don't mind. I think it's kind of fun, but somebody's going to end up really getting hurt.
Well, thank you.
So anything you guys can do to, if, I don't know where to lobby or who to talk to, but anything that you.
Came to the right place, that's for sure.
You are.
Anytime you're looking at expanding a road, if you'd also consider, adding a bike away as well, that I think would go a long ways to improving, Mentor and commuting in Mentor and relieve some of the pressures of drivers on the road.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more person before council, Mark O'Banion.
Excuse me, Mr., are you leaving? Can we get some more information from you? I think they wanted your email address if you.
Just go meet him.
Hey, Dave, give him this too, please.
This is card, Ray's card.
Sorry, John, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Let me know when I can start.
I think you did.
Aren't you done yet?
Working me.
State your name and address.
Yes, my name is Mark Leban. I live at 5430 Links. I'm having an ongoing issue with my neighbor in the back, Mr. Oho, at 5431 Grace Avenue, about poison ivy coming through my fence, and also his trees, dead branches coming into my yard, and all sorts of rotted wood and stuff like that. I also called on my neighbor at 5422 Links, which is owned by April McNeil and lived by Tony Cholinsky. About they cut their trees 2 months ago, and they left rotted wood. I had the city come out and the chief code inspector come out there. They did some work, but their backyard at 5422 Links is a mud pit. There's huge branches in the backyard, and it's a disaster area. Mr. Oho, I had, and your chief building code enforcer out. She tells me, okay, I don't know if your ordinance on poison ivy has changed. I don't know if your ordinance on wooded area has changed in the last 2 years, because I had the same issue in 2016. I had Andy Rose come out. He came out and took a look at the situation. He went over there and told him to clear the poison ivy 2 years ago and to clear all the dead wood out. Okay, now this new person has come out to my house, tells me that that 50 feet from a structure on my property, out 50 feet is the only way that the city can do anything with the poison ivy. Now, has that changed within the last 2 years? Because Andy Rose went over there, okay, and told the guy to clear out the roads. He cleared everything out 2 years ago. It's come back. My landscaper, I just had my landscaper weed out my whole backyard, whole flower bed in the backyard, and I put in 12 yards of mulch between the backyard and my front yard. Okay, and I just have a little 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch. The house behind me on Grace, with Mr. Oho, is a 5-bedroom, 4-bath house. Beautiful house in the front. But in the backyard, okay, it's a disaster area. okay? And I just want to know, has the code changed? And I want to know what's considered a wooden area. Now, she told me, okay, that she can't do nothing about that because it's a wooden area in his backyard. Now, I could see, okay, like by a creek, okay, that's a wooded area, or down the street at the end of my street on Links, and the house is there next to the marsh. Now, that's a wooden area. That's I can consider that a wooden area, okay? But I can't see that there's a wooden area, okay, right in somebody's backyard right behind me. Now, is the code changed? I don't know. I've tried to look for the ordinance on the website, and I spent about 2 to 3 hours looking at through the ordinance. I couldn't see nothing. The only thing I could see is for noxious weeds, is that shouldn't be anywhere around the yard. That's all I could find out on the website.
Okay.
I just want to know, because it's like, you know, I don't know if the code has changed or not.
Okay. Well,
Because
Mark,
I'm frustrated.
Yeah, I know. Mark, your time's up, but what we'll do is we'll have somebody from code enforcement discuss this topic with you.
Well, I already had her. I already had her, your chief of code enforcer out, Ann, okay, out to my house twice. Okay, she explained to me, okay, that she can't do nothing with the poison ivy. Okay, I'm advocating for my landscaper, because my landscaper just weeded it out.
Mark, let me do this. Like you said, your time's up. I'll discuss it with code enforcement, and I will get back to you.
Can I give you my phone number?
I think I'm pretty sure I've got your phone number, but go ahead, give it to me.
I'll give it 440-290-0087. Now, if you want my email, okay, you can email me too at mark, M-A-R-K, mob1@yahoo.com. Because I'm frustrated because, and then she explained it to me, okay, it's like, well, you're
Okay,
a
Mark,
mentor.
Mark, like I said.
You're a mentor, and you have to
Fine.
deal with the trees.
Okay, thank you.
So, I would like a response back.
You will.
Second.
Actually, I'd like to invite all of you out. I want to invite you, John, out